Hello everyone and welcome. This is the first video in my series about the Fountain Tarot. Okay, so if you haven't watched my intro video, please do that first so you kind of understand what I'm doing here. I want to keep each video brief just because it is a lot of information that we are going to cover. So today we're going to be talking about the court cards in the suit of coins that correlates with the Pentacles in the traditional Rider-Waite deck. And what I think is so interesting about the cards in the Fountain Tarot is that here you can really see a family dynamic being played out, whereas in the traditional deck, the cards don't really have much interaction between each other. I feel like the people in the Pentacles suit don't really seem like they're related or that they're telling the same story. They're all very kind of inwardly focused, and they're focused really only on the pentacle that they have in their hand. So there isn't that much of a, family kind of dynamic to tell. Also, this is the Golden Tarot, so it's a little bit different than other decks. And this page always confuses me because I always think that he's kind of too old. Usually pages are very young and they can be girls, so he always kind of throws me off because I think he's the knight, even though he's not. But that's just a side note. Okay, so when I first looked at these court cards together in the Fountain Tarot, I was really struck by how much they felt like a family. I think the first thing that really pulls them together is the color scheme. We are dealing with, green across the board as the overwhelming, color theme. And I really think that that talks back to the idea that this is the element Earth being represented here. So you can see there's different shades, like the king and the page both have kind of a lighter color spectrum, and I think that it is because their energy is more expressed outwardly, whereas the knight of coins and the queen of coins have a lot of darker colors. So you can kind of interpret that to be they're more internalized. They're kind of, maybe are showing that shadow side a little bit of the element air and element earth and what that kind of brings to the table. So, and I think that there is a lot more emotion showed in these two cards. The color green is also, and the idea of earth as the element that rules them is also played out in the symbol of the fern in each of the cards, and also just not only the fern but the idea of other like nature elements. So you can see in the page of coins, in her coin, she actually has ferns that are kind of etched into her coin. And these are really cool details about the Fountain Tarot. The artwork is beautiful where, they are kind of lifelike, but then they're also painterly, and you can kind of find hidden details in like how they were painted. So there's a very fine outline of a fern in here, and I think that that really represents new life, the idea of like, kind of like springtime. She looks very happy. She's in a field, she's outside, she's playing. So there's youthfulness, there's health and vitality in this card. She seems very like a young and free spirit. So I am going to talk a lot about astrology and how the symbolism really mirrors itself in the tarot. So if we think about the element earth in astrology, the the zodiac signs that are ruled by earth are Taurus, Virgo, and Capricorn. Okay, so I really see these cards kind of representing different ones. So the page of coins really instantly reminds me of Virgo energy. So Virgos are really focused on their health, and and it's just they have a lot of the same kind of qualities that Earth brings to them that are also played out in this card. So health is one of them, being independent, you know, kind of being not like a loner, but wanting to just go out and kind of discover things on their own, not needing other people to help them. That's huge. And then also a connection to nature, a connection to the earth, needing the earth to feel grounded and centered. You know, is definitely also a huge part of that sign. And lastly, just the idea of Virgo being the virgin. So that does kind of have a direct correlation to the page, who is the youngest and typically, you know, innocent and hasn't really had any hardships in the world quite yet, and is, you know, at one with nature and the universe around her. So, the page of coins, I kind of went on a tangent there. I was gonna, whatever, it's fine. So for me, when I first intuitively looked at this card within the group, so within this family dynamic, I really saw the page as the youngest sibling, the sister who is much younger than the older brother, who's the knight. And because of this, she's kind of grown up in her own little world. She is that kind of younger sibling who's almost like an only child, who has a very different experience growing up than the older son probably did. She is a product of a marriage where the parents are vastly different ages, from what we can see here. And she is, you know, has those Virgo qualities about her. So she is young at heart, but she also is kind of serious. She doesn't naturally need other people to entertain herself. She feels very much like she's independent and analytical, and she has this air about her where she doesn't really need friends necessarily or siblings. She's very happy with herself. So she's naturally introverted. She's, you know, okay with, you know, adventuring off on her own. So she's not the kind of person that's just going to sit inside. She's going to be outside with nature, doing what she wants to do. And she enjoys maybe not talking and just being around animals or plants or out in fields, you know, just observing nature. She also, you know, is very smart. She's thoughtful. And I think she kind of observes other people's relationships and maybe other dynamics within the family without really being a part of them. I also, because she's outside and kind of exploring in nature, I really get the sense that she has just naturally been blessed with kind of good luck, abundance, good fortune. She hasn't really had to worry too much about, you know, any, like, you know, just hardships. I feel like she's just been naturally blessed, and you can really get that sense because she's really at one with this coin. She's holding it, she's happy. It's, you know, it's just bestowing abundance and good luck on her. So I do feel like if you were to pull this card in a reading and using this deck, you could really interpret the person having those qualities, right? So when we see her in the family, like I said, youngest sibling, kind of only child, introverted, smart, connected to nature, and that's our page of coins. So for the Knight of Coins, my first impression of this card is that he's a lot more serious, and I feel like he has a lot more troubles on his mind than the traditional card. Okay, so and I kind of interpret that because of the dark colors and this kind of contrast between light and dark, right? So he's really making a choice, and that's what I see here, where he's choosing, you know, do I step into the light, or, you know, what is this kind of dark emotional baggage that he's carrying with him? You know, we can kind of understand that dilemma in the Rider Waite deck, because he's riding a black horse. And when you think about the traditional meaning of this card, it is someone who's kind of returned from battle. He's victorious. He, but he still has seen and done maybe terrible things. So he's kind of coming back with the weight on his shoulders, and whatever he's gained has not been without hardship. So that can kind of also be applied to this card. However, I do really see the Knight in the Fountain Tarot to be dealing with more of a choice, or maybe the consequences of his choices. He seems like an older brother, so maybe someone who is in college, and I really feel like he is away from the rest of his family. He feels very separate from the rest of them, and it feels like he has been kind of that older sibling or first child who feels very pressured and pushed to be to achieve a lot in his life. You can see the way he's holding the coin. It feels like almost like a burden, or it feels like that's his only focus, right? So he's looking to it for guidance, and it's kind of that one guiding force in his life that is pushing him to, pushing him forward, and, no matter what, if it's good or bad. So I kind of see him as maybe someone who is at, let's say, an Ivy League school, and he is just really kind of struggling to differentiate between what he wants and what he wants to achieve, and what is expected by him from society or from his parents, and the weight of those decisions. That also is kind of like, as far as symbolism goes, the mountain in the background could be a challenge of some kind. The darkness at the bottom of the card is that kind of depth of emotions, or that shadow side, feeling that weight where he's not quite sure if he's ready, or if this is what he really wants. And you can see in this card, very faintly in the coin, there is a horse head. So that, or at least that's what it looks like to me. So you can see that's where they kind of pull in the art of the knight and symbolism of the horse. So like I said, I think that the two of them, they have, very different lives, very different energy about them. As far as the Zodiac, I think that he really, really, really is connected to Capricorn. So if you understand astrology and the kind of person that Capricorn is, hardworking, loyal, really all about money and success financially, often, not all the time, but also, feeling the burden and the weight of needing to achieve a lot and be perfect and be seen as, a successful person in the world. All of these kind of things can be seen and played out in the Knight of Coins here. Okay, just checking to see where we are. And we are moving on to the Queen of Coins. So she is so beautiful in this card. I really love this interpretation of the Queen. I think that she has a lot more emotional depth in the Fountain Tarot than she does in the traditional Rider-Waite. So, first impressions, as far as a family dynamic, I really get the sense that the Queen of Coins is the matriarch of this family. She seems strict and stern, but also very loving and giving and protective. If we can kind of jump forward and talk about the king, you notice obvious differences between them. And here, I think it's age. So I think that, if we're going to talk about kind of a real world scenario of who these people are, she married him for money, and there's a huge age difference. And I think that there's a huge divide between the two, the king and queen, as a couple. But what they do agree on is money, wealth, and financial success. They think that that is really the end all be all. And I think that that is probably what brought them together. So she is definitely a woman who, you know, married for status, married for power. I think maybe power more than status, and married, for money because she knew that that was the way to, give her family and her children everything that they needed. That's where her priorities are. So her priorities really are as a mother and as a caregiver and as a powerful matriarch and leader and caregiver. But, she is really going to take it that extra step where she will get those things by any means necessary. She's not going to, cut corners or, sacrifice. She's going to do whatever is necessary to give her children and her family what they need. So I kind of see her as, the mother who really pushed her children and, pushes her children to be the best that they can be in every aspect of their lives. She holds them to a high standard. I don't think that she's overly emotional. I think that she's very neutral. So she could be that loving, caring, mother who is cooking for you and feeding you and taking care of you, but she also was, very stern and strict and expected you to do your homework and expected you to, you know, get A's on everything and to do extracurriculars and be the best. And she wasn't going to, let you emotionally manipulate the situation or manipulate her. She had a very clear headed focus, right? So she's gonna be the mom that doesn't fall for the kids' tricks. So I kind of see all of this for a couple of reasons. From her pose, she's very strong. You can see that. The element earth is also represented by the shrubbery in this card. And the difference is instead of them being ferns, you can see that they're, well manicured, kind of funky bushes, right? And to me, she is really, really invoking a lot of Venus energy, and Venus is, of course, the goddess of love. But, when you bring Venus in with Earth, you get Taurus. So she is very much a Taurus mother. So caring, loving, nurturing, but also strict, stern, stubborn, realistic, very much not going to be the kind of mom that lets you pull the wool over her eyes at all. So I find what's really interesting about this card is how the coin is being pulled into her robes right at the bottom. So she's not holding it. It took me a while to interpret what is actually on the coin, and it is 3 rabbits. So rabbits, I have hair on my card. Rabbits can represent fertility, sexuality, and reproduction because, for obvious reasons. And they also represent spring, new life. So I really see this as, kind of just going back to what I just said about Venus and Earth, the idea of an abundant Earth who can procreate and grow, and especially in springtime when everything's beautiful and lush and green and, producing. This card is open to interpretation. I think that you could see her as being pregnant in this card. From the pose and the way she's standing. She also kind of really has a connection to the Empress card, and that's within the traditional deck. So the idea of her possibly being pregnant is on the table, and I think that it could be interpreted in that way if, you see other cards that kind of indicate that. And especially, let's say, if the Empress is with it, or if you have the Ace of Cups with it, those cards would kind of further indicate that there could be someone who's pregnant. But I really think that that depends on your intuition within the individual reading. So she could just be kind of that, pulling in those energies of a creative, feminine, earthly empress goddess kind of idea, and not necessarily be having a baby. It does also have some of the darkest colors within the 4 cards. So that really tells me that she is not without burdens, right? So that's kind of going back to the idea that she is definitely one of those mothers that will do whatever it takes to take care of her children. She is very introspective. I think she is kind of, Taurus people can kind of be clairsentient, so they'll know something in their gut and they'll kind of feel it before it even manifests. So she could be intuitive as far as like to her children's needs. She's just very connected. She's very connected to her children, to the earth, to the world around her, and she also just, she knows herself. I think she knows her good and her bad sides. She's the kind of person that knows that she can't be pushed because she will take it too far, if and she will, go above and beyond to the furthest degree for the people that she loves. So she carries a lot of internal emotional weight. I don't think that she outwardly expresses it. So she's not going to be the lovey-dovey kind of person. She's going to be a little bit more reserved, a little bit more held back. She may not give praise easily. She's going to show love rather than say it out loud, right? It's going to be actions more than words. Okay, and lastly, we have the King of Coins. Okay, so he is once again very interesting to me just because he is like this very kind of unique looking person in this deck. He's a little bit older looking. He looks, like a successful businessman. I mean, he's wearing a blazer. So it's very different from the traditional deck where everyone's kind of in like their cloaks and very old fashioned. Here you can kind of see that he's been modernized and you get a sense of, okay, I know exactly who this person is. He is, a businessman. He has one thing on his mind, and that is money. Money on the mind. All day, all the time. He is a businessman through and through. So he, in the modern kind of interpretation of who the King of Coins would be, I see him as someone who was like a ruthless businessman from a young age, worked super hard, self-made, has a successful business, but it's the only thing on his mind 24/7. So I definitely see him as being very separate from the rest of the family. I think that he kind of allows his wife to lead the family and he takes a back seat because his main focus and priority is always going to be on work. The structure that he seems to be sitting in looks kind of like an elevator or like a room. So, you can kind of see him as someone who maybe works in like this crazy, building, office, skyscraper. Like he's very much like the typification of what you'd expect, like a CEO to be like, or someone on Wall Street, someone who is just knows how to play the game in this world. So he's got that one thing on his mind, and it's money. So this coin was really hard to interpret, as far as what was drawn in it. If I had to guess, I would say that it kind of does look like a ram or a bull because I can kind of see horns, but it's really hard to guess. And I think that he also could be representing another aspect of Taurus, especially if it is a bull right there. And that is that like stubborn, unrelenting kind of person who is never going to give up, is going to like just kind of keep moving forward, and work super, super hard. And also is like, you know, focused on the green, focused on money, focused on success and material, and likes the finer things. Because since Venus rules Taurus, both of them really like the finer things in life. That's what connects them. You know, they want that kind of that luxury and elegance. You can see she likes elegance from her bushes, and he's in like this very fancy building. So that's what they need. I'm gonna burn myself. Okay, I'm at 26 minutes now. So their connection ultimately, I think, is in their need for status and material success and wealth. They are a true Taurus couple. You know, however, they are very different people. She really is the kind of feminine aspect of that motherly, nurturing, you know, protective, whereas he is the masculine, where he's focused on money and success and the finer things in life. I do find it really interesting that the greenery does kind of come into the card. So you can see that he is very grounded. He has kind of that, you know, he has a very strong, heavy presence about him, I would say. And I do think that there is a part of him that, even though he is, you know, very focused on material success, he still has the good qualities in him that Taurus brings. So feeling connected to the earth and to family, whatever, all of that good stuff. So I think of all the cards, though, the very literal interpretation of money on his mind is here. So I think that, you know, it does affect all the decisions that he makes, especially when it comes to how he pushes his children, how he, you know, tries to teach them the ways of the world, maybe teaches them about the family business. He puts very high expectations on them to be successful. You know, it's kind of failure is not an option kind of thing, but he also takes a step back. He doesn't discipline them. He allows the mother or the matriarch to do that, right? So he's kind of this distant presence in their lives where, you know, they know what he expects, but he's really not there on a day-to-day basis. I think he is very focused on his business, and he can kind of have that wall around him, like a very literal wall that you see in this card, where he is just, you know, kind of doing his own thing, and a lot like how the Page of Coins is, where they are less connected to the family and more kind of interested in, you know, forging their own path and doing their own thing. He has this wall built around him, and that is, you know, this his success and his status and his business. So he isn't connected in the everyday affairs of the family. And I think that he and his wife really don't have like that deep emotional connection. I think that their connection is more about, you know, ultimately wanting to achieve the same goals. And there really isn't anything wrong with that. I think that, you know, it works for some people, and that's what some people seek, and that dynamic is definitely working for them, because you can see that there really isn't any discord between them. They, you know, they share the same colors, they share the same thoughts, ideas, and feelings, and they really are two aspects of this like same kind of sign. But you have to understand that what connects them is common goals and achievements rather than the deep emotional bond. And you know, if we look at the traditional cards, they don't really seem very connected either. I mean, she's wearing her blue, so I do see her as being kind of intuitive and, you know, motherly, maybe a little bit more emotional than what we see in the Fountain Tarot. And he has red, so he's very driven. He's you know, he's powerful, but they both, their number one thing is the coin in their hand. I think that the Fountain Tarot has a lot of good insight into each one of these cards. I really hope that this helped you guys kind of understand the court cards in a more modern way. So if you do pull them in a reading and you're not quite sure how they correlate with the rest of the cards, you know, just think about some of the personality traits that I kind of went over and the story for each of the characters, and that can really help you kind of just dig a little deeper into your reading. So, oh, and these two were Taurus, like I said before. So, I really hope you guys enjoyed this. I'm going to be doing this with the entire deck. It is a huge endeavor, but I really think that it'll help me and you. So, yeah, I hope you enjoyed watching this, and I will see you in my next video.